Hello, this is part of the Seven Giants series of talks on geopolitics, socio-economics, and the military power of the great powers of our age. Uh, this talk is going to be on China. Now, China is a difficult entity to place really in the world. If you put it after the European Union, it's in terms of economic power, it's probably the third or fourth largest power. In terms of exports, it's just behind, if you count Germany on its own as the world's largest exporter of actual products. In terms of tangible goods, those are goods that you can touch, that means tangible, then it is the second largest exporter after the European Union itself, and Germany being the principal exporter in the European Union. But China doesn't have the consumer market that Japan has, or the United States has, or the European Union, or even arguably India, which I will be doing a talk on as part of this series. Now, China though is a very well balanced power. It's had to go through a massive amounts of reforms since the premiership of Deng Xiaoping, who united Hong Kong with China and was the second in command of Mao through and survived Mao's purges and the extermination of over 60 million people by Mao. Um, it, he was a survivor, and he made China a survivor. Um, Deng Xiaoping created what is modern China now by opening up capitalist economic zones on the coasts and in the river basins. He started the Seven Gorges Dam, will create electricity for China, although it will cause massive environmental damage. Um, he opened up communist China to the west. Now, most of communist China today still works on a communist system, but there are economic zones. There are hundreds of cities, each for 1 million people, being built. Those are more than new towns. Those are new cities being built. China is building at a rate that is only arguably being challenged by Europe and the Middle East, whereas they're putting in brand new infrastructure. American infrastructure is collapsing with bad bridges and bad railways and a electricity grid that's from the 70s or even 50s. China looks to threaten America as a superpower militarily, because China has unexpectedly even gone past Russia in terms of military technology. This was not expected, right? I repeat, this was not expected. The Russians, after the Europeans, are the chief technological threat to American technological military supremacy. Okay, but the Chinese recently, within the last 2 years, have overtaken them. China is building a blue water fleet. That is a fleet that can patrol the Pacific, that can go into the Indian Ocean, where incidentally the Indians are now building a blue water fleet to patrol the Indian Ocean and fight Somali piracy, which is even going as far east as India itself. The Chinese, as a export power, I said, go after the European Union, but in terms of actual total economy, they are probably the third largest. There, there is a debate about whether China and Japan are equal, um, but China and Japan have some key differences, culturally and economically. I'll just deal with the economics. Um, China is still an industrial power. It's not a postmodern power. It hasn't developed any moral or ethical leadership in the world. In fact, quite the opposite. There are still millions and millions of people every year dying in concentration camps in China, being exterminated. Um, People babies in dying rooms, opinions being suppressed. It is still a very much a communist Soviet Maoist country. It's only the economics that have changed in China. Um, Books are banned. The right to protest is banned. It's only in Hong Kong that there are some there are some democratic rights, but even there it's being squeezed. Okay, but we're just dealing with whether China is a superpower. Well, China has experienced, along with the rest of the world, the greatest migration of people, and it's experienced the greatest internal migration of people. That is both of Han Chinese and ethnic minorities in China. That is a massive movement, both east and west. As in the 90s there was and 80s there was a massive move by over 300 million people, because China's got a population of over a billion people, who moved to the coast to these economic zones, but some of them just didn't make it in a hard-nosed, absolutely neo-capitalist world, and so they've been moving moving west, into Tibet, into the Turkic-speaking regions, where you've recently seen lots of riots between them and the Uyghurs, who are an ethnic minority in China, and it's also where China tests its nuclear weapons, which might not help the Uyghurs' cause that much. Um, there's also an Islamic insurgency, and it's argued by security analysts that China is helping Maoist rebels in both Burma and whilst it props up the military regime there, and in India. But the greatest effect that China has had is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. That is the organization that binds China, Russia, India, Pakistan, the Central Asian powers, chiefly Kazakhstan, together to prevent America encircling China and Russia through Central Asia. Um, Also, over 20 million Chinese people have been relocated to Africa. They've basically taken East Africa over. They are about to really annoy the Americans and probably the Europeans as well by opening an economic zone around the Suez Canal, of all places. And these economic zones are another way of saying, in modern speak, for colonies. Is the United States and is the European Union going to tolerate the key point in the Middle East, the Suez Canal, being run in a sense by China? I don't think so. There's going to be some talks on that. I'm probably right in saying that. But the Chinese are giving the Africans a better deal than the Americans and Europeans have, and they've taken over Africa in a sense without even firing a shot. Over the past 20 years this has been going on. It's not just a recent thing, and we have been concerned with things that are, to us, are within our parochial idea of how the world works, whereas the Chinese have been working in a very realist way. This is why we're being outmaneuvered, because China has decreased the size of its military personnel, it's advanced its technology, it's building a blue water fleet. It is also learning from people like Iran how to fight asymmetrically. European military analysts and American military analysts recently saw a combined combined force military exercise with China and Russia exercising their forces together, and they remarked on the advanced techniques that the Chinese and Russians were using. These have been copied obviously from the West, but they've also incorporated asymmetric warfare, and that makes China basically, you can't invade China, you can't stop it, but we must engage China economically. Now, there is a symbiotic relationship between America and China that I've already explained in my US military hyperpower video. I suggest you follow the bubble and check out that vid.